don't really get really any Kuma and Bonnie necessarily this chapter, but I mean, it's kind of mentioned and stuff like that. So, who wanted to say hi? Hi. Okay, so before we actually get into chapter 1108, um, we have two cover things. First, we have the cover of Shonen Jump itself, which is Luffy in Gear 5th, rearing back with one of his fists, getting ready to punch whoever it is he's looking at. Saturn, Kizaru, Eam, Blackbeard, take your pick. The Reader, um, take your pick. And it looks pretty good. It's very, very. It is a little bit stylized just because of how it looks, but I do like the way that it's designed. And then the cover page for the chapter itself is actually several weeks ago or a month ago or so, we had like the dragon thing for celebrating the new year. This one is just a bunch of the One Piece girls. Not nearly as many as like several months ago when we had the all of the One Piece girls, out having fun, swimming and everything like that. This is all of them looking, this is 6 of them looking much more refined, drinking champagne. There's like dogs, cute, expensive dogs in the background. They're in a very nice, fancy sofa in a nice, fancy room and everything like that. And we have Robin, Uta, Nami, Tashigi, Reiju, and Hancock are all there. Nami and Uta are smiling and laughing with like Nami's arm thrown around Uta, Robin smiling in the background behind them. Reiju kind of looks like she's about to have a bit of fun trying to tease Tashigi. Tashigi does not look particularly enthused about this. She looks very concerned. And Hancock is just kind of, they're not really. She's not really interacting necessarily with any of the other girls, but I do like the design of the way that this looks. Also, I just love Uta, so I like it whenever they put Uta and stuff. I don't necessarily know if this is supposed to be a reference to anything, but it's just like a nice drawing setup of like a bunch of the fairly prominent female characters in One Piece. And then into the chapter itself. The chapter is called Attention World, so that goes into what happens at the end of the chapter. Before that, we got to deal with a bunch of other stuff. So we see the marine ships keep being attacked. I think we see at least 2 or 3 that have been fairly destroyed by the pacifistas. And we cut to inside the island, where we cut back to Caribou, Van Augur, and Katarina Devon, with Augur, rightfully so, pointing his rifle at Caribou, and Caribou on the ground pleading for his life, and such, which, okay, by technicality, for the Straw Hats, it would be much more beneficial for Van Augur to just shoot Caribou and be done with it. That would be more beneficial for the Straw Hats and the world as a whole. Caribou is like, please don't do this, please wait, I have information, please don't kill me. And Katarina Devon is like, who is this disgusting thing? I think Katarina's looking at Caribou like he's mud on the bottom of her shoe, or not even mud she wants to step in. And Van Augur's like, he's wet-haired Caribou. By the way, Caribou's epitaph is just so stupid. Whoever was coming up with epitaphs, whatever it is, on the day that Caribou got his was just like, I don't know, he's got stupid looking hair, looks wet. Wet-haired Caribou. There we go. That's his name. That's just weird for his epitaph. But Caribou's just like, please, don't kill me. I have information. And Van Augur's just like, yeah, well, there's a lot of people after the Commodore's life. So, what would you be able to tell us that would be any form of useful to us? That's not just, you trying to sneakily join us from being on a government island where we are now, and why are you even here? And Caribou's just like, no, please, you have it all wrong. I don't want to kill Teach. I adore him. And, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, Van Argo, who, as pointed out, is being a very useful member of the Blackbeard Pirates in regards to being able to teleport all over the place, is probably A, has had it up to here with people's BS at this point in time, and B, is just like, this guy just looks gross. Why in the world would we want to have anything to do with him? See, I just want to go home and lay down and have coffee and go to sleep. And have just people leave me alone for a while. Van Augur needs his quiet time soon. And Caribou's just like, because I have extremely valuable information, the kind that's hard to come by. And then I think it's either him trying to explain it to them a little bit, or it's him just, running through the information in his head as it's being, reminding the audience of what he is aware of. So it's, he's aware of the fact that Shirahoshi is Pluton and that she's in Fishman Island. He's aware of the fact that, or that she's Poseidon and in Fishman Island. And he's aware of the fact that Pluton is in Wano, and that it's like underneath Wano and everything like that. And that like the only other group of people in the world that have both pieces of this information are the Straw Hats. And, so it's just like Oda reminding us what Caribou is aware of. Now, for the Straw Hats, by a technicality, I mean, yeah, several of them are aware of, like, Poseidon and Pluton and everything like that. But Luffy would not intentionally try to use Shirahoshi as a weapon, and I don't think any of the other Straw Hats would as well. Shirahoshi offering to try to use her powers to have the Sea Kings help them is a different story, but Luffy wouldn't force her to do it unless it was like a life or death situation type of a thing, I think. Like what happened at Fishman Island with the Noah and everything. And then when it comes to, Poseidon, when it comes to Pluton, Luffy, like, he was offered the chance to have Pluton, and he's like, no, I don't want it. He's like, no, I don't want Pluton. It can stay sleeping beneath Wano. It's fine. So, it's just like, Luffy didn't particularly have an interest in that. I mean, maybe if it was more less compounding factors of like, well, to get at Pluton, we'd have to knock down all the walls around Wano, and that would cause a little problems in Wano, blah, 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 probably cause natural disasters all over the country, and a bunch of stuff like that. Luffy's like, nah, this country's been through enough, we'll leave it alone, type of a thing. Teach, on the other hand, is far less likely to do that. Even though he was friends with Oden and knew Momonosuke and Hiyori when they were children, given everything else that we've seen about Blackbeard, he doesn't have scruples. He does not care about the fact that, like, oh, I had been friends with Oden, and I was on Whitebeard's ship when, like, Hiyori and, Momonosuke were born and everything like that, and I knew them as babies and everything like that. It's Blackbeard doesn't have any type of emotional remorse in that regard, considering, he stabbed Thatch in the back and led to Ace being captured and killed. So, it's not like he's particularly, he wouldn't care about going to Wano and just basically using, the Quake fruit to just, like, get up by one of the seawalls around Wano and just, like, use his powers to make it, fall apart and then, like, suck in all of the rubble from the debris from it falling down, and uses, black vortex or whatever to, like, suck in all the water or whatever the case would be, or make Caribou do it now that he has, like, a pocket dimension in that regard. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past Teach to do that, but first they have to even try to get Caribou to Teach. And Katarina Devon and Van Augur seem to have the looks of like, should we trust him? Is it worth it? Bear in mind, I have no doubt at all that Katarina Devon and Van Augur could easily dispatch Caribou so freaking quickly if they had to. Just Van Augur, bing, Caribou done. Katarina Devon just slices his head off with Haki, and he's probably not coming back. Or they just have enjoyed torturing him by putting sea stone cuffs on him, type of a thing. Or let Blackbeard have fun with him and use him as a toy in that regard. after he got whatever information he wanted from Caribou. None of that really surprised me, but Caribou is, of course, like, I have, I'll surrender the information free of charge. I'm sure he'll be pleased. Just take me with you. I know I can be of use. It's just like he's pleading for his life. Yeah. Cutting back to the Marine ships, we see more of them getting destroyed, and they're just like, pull back from the shore, and it's just like, we have to stop firing on the Pacifista, and we see the Pacifista Mark IIIs using the bubble shields that we saw them implement earlier on in the arc, that are, being able to, block or bounce back to a degree the cannonballs. And we see a bunch of the lower ranked Marines are just like, those damn bubble shields. I never thought we'd learn about the power of this special science group like this. Well, learn about it one way or the other. And of course we see the Mark IIIs setting off the lasers more at the ships, causing more and more harm, because of course they're still under Bonnie's control. Now we're going to get, throughout the rest of this chapter, we're going to get a bunch of the other Vice Admirals that we've seen introduced. So first up we have Bluegrass, who we've already met before. She's the granny looking older woman Vice Admiral that might be friends with Suru for all we know. There she has the ride fruit that allows her to control whatever it is that she's on, because like we saw her get on a Pacifista before and use that, even though the Pacifista itself would have been on the side of Sentomaru at that point in time. And later on we're going to see her riding a sea beast, one of the mechanized sea beasts. And like that's a good way of like getting past her problem with like, well, I can't go in the water, but I can ride on this thing and get to where I need to go. But we see her and she's like, this is so frustrating. I can't cut loose. We'll just be hurting ourselves as we take out these units. Because it's like, true, they don't want to destroy the Pacifistas, because if they get rid of Bonnie, then they can get the Pacifistas back under their control, as is going to get pointed out in a moment. And it's like, okay, well, we don't want to destroy them, but we're going to keep losing numbers of our own ships if we don't do something, because they keep either lasering the ships and getting rid of them, or bouncing back the cannonballs or something like that to just cause more damage to the ships. So yeah, we cut to one of the other Vice Admirals, who is Vice Admiral Hound, who is he's the one that looks like he's got like blonde hair and like lipstick and glasses. He also is like thinking of like, it'd be unprecedented, but is there any chance of calling off the Buster Call for now? Well, by technicality, if you want to go with non-canon stuff, no, it's not unprecedented, because they did that in Stampede. They had the Buster Call going on the island where Bullet was, along with all the other pirates, and then they had called it off at the end because Smoker's like, no, Bullet's been handled. Call off the call off the Buster Call. Can't really call off a Buster Call, unfortunately. And then we meet another Vice Admiral, who is Vice Admiral Guillotine, who is he's one of the Vice Admirals that has like this long black beard, and looks like he's got like a sword or like a blade looking thing on his head for like how his hair is designed. And he's just like, Vegapunk himself gave that pirate the authority to command the Pacifista, right? There's no way we can stop him. It's like, after this, there's no doubt he's rebel scum. We should focus on getting the Pacifista back on our side. And then we cut to Doberman, who we've seen several times. And he's like, that means taking Juri Bonnie's head. All available Vice Admirals should leave their stations and hunt her down immediately. And he's like, her current escape route from the center of the Fabrostratum, fabrication spear, will lead her to the northeast coast. We must eliminate her. And we get like a map of the island from like up above, where we see we see it surrounded by the different Navy ships. That's not surprising. And then at the northeast coast, we see what is most likely a much bigger ship, that is the Elbas ship. So that's what that's supposed to be representing there. And we see the arrow showing which way her, Frankie, Atlas and Kuma would be headed from the middle of the Phobos Bureau. I was trying to look to see. No, on the map that we get here, we don't of the island. There's not too much other detail about like what's where and stuff like that, but it gives us a bit of an idea of like the scale. For like, cause there's still all of the trees around the outside of the island, so that's why the people on the ships aren't really able to see the fact that Saturn is a giant spider demon, and he's gonna go more spider in a couple of minutes. But we get into the island where we see one of the vice admirals. Who he's Vice Admiral Tossa is what his name is, and he's one of the more big burly admirals that they had there with like kind of a more bushy beard, and he's like, Roger that, Tossa here, I'm already hot on their heels, I'll get them. And he's hockeying up his fingers, so he's probably pretty good at armament hockey, and he's it stated that these fingers will drag her to hell, is what he's thinking. He's just like, my 10-barrel finger gun can even rip open armor. It's like, okay, I guess that is fairly impressive. But, you know, some of the stuff that like Luffy can do not involving hockey can do the same thing. Or Zoro or Sanji not involving hockey can do the same thing. But he's coming up right behind the group, jumping up on them, ready to attack them. And he's trying to use his Tossa Crunch. I saw in one of the other translations that it's a slightly different variation of it, that it's like Bite or something else. But it's him trying to, probably trying to use it like a lobster claw setup, where he's trying to jump where he can get Bonnie and then just Bonnie. And I'm like, not a bad decision. That's not a bad concept. And, you know, Bonnie and Frankie are just like, oh my god, crap, it's the Marines. And Bonnie is freaking out, rightfully so. Toss is just about to get her, and then... Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, baby girl. I'm sorry. You're okay. You're a good girl. Was that less noisy? That was better. I still don't like it, but it was better. See this giant axe literally come down and go on top of him. I can't tell if it's the blade part down on top of him, or if it's like smashing him like with the flat side of the axe. I can't tell. I don't see any blood, and I don't think we see Tossa anymore during this chapter. But we see the axe come down. Bonnie freak out as she looks up what it is. And then it's either Frankie or Bonnie like, there are giants on this island? Are they enemies too? We're in a rush, you know? And we hear, ba, who are you guys? And we cut and we see Dory and Bragi in all their glory. And it's just like, we checked the bounty posters to make sure we'd recognize the new members, but none of you look familiar. Are you researchers? And that's I think that's Bragi that's saying that, and then Dory is, or I can never remember which one's which. I am so sorry. But damn it, it went out of focus. Here we go. I can never remember which one's which for Dory and Bragi. But one of them is just like, you know, we checked the bounty posters and you don't look familiar. And the other one's like, you know, we've come to get the Straw Hats. And Frankie is just like, what for? Luffy's my captain. Do you have a grudge against him? And, you know, I like that this is a callback, because off of their current bounty posters, no, Frankie does not look like his bounty poster. Frankie's bounty poster is the Sunny. If they had gone off the bounty posters from Fishman Island, from the beginning of the time skip, or from before Egghead, or from before everything happened at Wano, with their last bounty raid after what happened in Totland, then they would recognize Frankie, because Frankie's bounty posters were him. No, wait, no. I don't think they were him yet. I know at one point we had Frankie's bounty poster that was him as he is now, but then it ended up being changed into the Frankie Shogun, and then eventually it's the 1000 Sunny. So probably I can see why they would be like, well, you don't look familiar. And Dorian Bragi are just smiling. It's just like, no, nothing like that. We've only got gratitude for him. And just like, we're warriors from Elbaf. If you're friends of his, we'll do our best to keep you safe. And Bonnie is just like, Luffy, Sanji, and Vegapunk are still back there. Can you help them too? And Dorian Bragi are just smiling, and it's like, those names sure takes me back for Sanji and Luffy. And it's just like, yep, you betcha, little missy. And he's just like smiling. It is kind of like that Saul smile that we get, and I love seeing Dorian Bragi again. I'm so happy about that. Just like them smiling at this and everything. And they're just having fun to a degree right now. Yeah, they're there on a serious mission to try to get the Straw Hats and get them safely to Elbaf. But they're also just kind of having fun, because this is like the first excursion that like the giant warrior pirates have had in 100 years as like a full crew, with Dory and Bragi and Oimo and Kashi and a bunch of the other giants and stuff like that. So it's fun for them. And of course, they're off to go and try to save their friend, their friends in the Straw Hats, and save, and by an extension of that, find, Nika and everything like that. And we have the other one that's mentioned, Vegapunk. He's the one that Scholar mentioned, right? Okay. Whether or not this is a reference to the fact that by Scholar they mean Saul, because Saul has been on Elbaf for probably about the last just under 22 years, given that Ohara happened 22 years ago. Saul has been there for over 2 decades. Dory and Bragi have only been back on the island for at most probably a couple of months. Given the fact that, because at the beginning of the time skip we saw that they were still on Little Garden fighting, and then now several months later, after the beginning of the time skip, they are now back on Elbaf, technically now on AK. So they would not know who Clover is, so it can't be Clover, so it can't be anybody else from Ohara unless there's some other survivor from Ohara. But they're like, is that the one that the Scholar mentioned? And we know that Saul has had communication with Vegapunk over the years because of, Elbaf, or because of what happened on Ohara. So there's that possibility that they're mentioning Saul. That would mean that Dory and Bragi at least have gone to talk to Saul. One thing that I don't think has ever really gone over that much when it comes to Elbaf culture is, we know that Elbaf culture, that the giants adore, the sun god, and Elbaf, the warrior god, and everything like that. And that, they've been worshiping Nika, the sun god, and everything like that from everything else that we've heard. We don't really know how much giants value intelligence and battle and knowledge and stuff like that. Mostly because we haven't really had any instance where that's been something that's been brought up. Robin, the only giants really beyond Saul back on Ohara that Robin really had any form of interaction with at all were Oimo and Kashi, and even then she was not around them that much. That was a bunch of the other Straw Hats at the time that were around Oimo and Kashi when everything was happening on Enies Lobby. So we don't really know what the giants think of scholars. It could be that the giants still have a great respect for scholars and for history and everything like that, because a lot of their legends came from history, and so they may have this good amount of respect for like Saul as a scholar and the fact that he survived this horrible thing at Ohara and everything like that 22 years ago. So they might have a lot of respect for him in that regard. And they obviously went and talked to him at some point in time if they're referring to Saul, and Saul gets another mention later in this chapter. But it's like, okay, well, what would have been... I really hope we get a flashback to when Dory and Bragi got back to Elbaf. And like them meeting Shanks, talking to Saul, blah, 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 blah. A bunch of other stuff happens when they get back to Elbaf. Maybe that's how we get introduced to Prince Loki and the king of Elbath or whatever at that point in time in a flashback. That might be an interesting way of doing it. So we see Dory and Bragi head off into the forest, and they're like, carried into the ship. We'll go ahead. The fire's starting to get out of control, so, there's fire going on around the island, so that's causing more devastation. We see two of the other giants. One of them has like this big bushy mustache and bushy hair in the back, kind of curly, and he's got Frankie and Bonnie in like one arm, and then he's carrying Kuma in his other, for like giant size comparisons, and they're like, aye aye, Captain. And it's either Bonnie or Frankie that's like, giant allies, huh? And Frankie's like, are they the masters Usopp's always going on about? It's true, they are the masters that Usopp's always going on about in regards to Dory and Bragi, so that's good. So I would say that Bonnie, Kuma, Frankie, and Atlas are fairly safe at the moment. They are with the giants. They are with the giant warrior pirates. They're going to get hopefully taken to the ship, so that way that's like a few less people that like the Straw Hats have to worry about like getting to the ship, because they're already going to be on the ship. And then if they can get the Thousand Sunny to the ship or sailing next to the ship, they should be fine to the Elbath ship. So they should be fine there, so I don't think we have to worry about them. Back to the Vice Admirals for a little bit. We're going to get introduced to a few more. So first we have the guy that kind of looks like, well, he's got kind of like, the ancient Oni teeth, and he's got like a top hat looking thing on him. And that is Vice Admiral Urban, and he's like, ah, darn, the line's gone dead. And then we have Vice Admiral Pomsky, who is, I really don't know how to describe how he looks. He's got kind of the longer wavy hair, a big chin. I really can't describe anything else about him. And they're just like, did they counter his attack, or was it the giants? I'm heading to the island. And we cut back to Bluegrass, who was like, hop on, doll, we'll attack from the sea. So then we see them on the giant giraffe sea beast. So we got another giraffe involved here than just Kaku. This one's not trapped in a bubble. Sailing on, Bluegrass is using her ride powers to, make the beast obey her. And then Doll is like hanging out on the back of it, just kind of like standing there coolly. Very stoic as she's like riding on the back of this thing. Bear in mind, we do not know yet if Doll has devil fruit. And if she does, we don't know what kind it is, but smart on Bluegrass for being able to like, oh, well, I personally cannot go in the water, so this giraffe sea beast that can be in the water is going to be my transportation. So I give her kudos for that. And giraffe. My mom loves giraffes. She also loves ducks. And Doll is just like, the ship on the northeast shore is definitely from Elbath. Our fortune keeps flip-flopping. Giants are no joke. And it's Bluegrass. And she's like, have you ever fought one? And Doll is just like, my commanding officer a little over 20 years ago was a giant. Ding, 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 ding. And Bluegrass is like, past tense, you must be talking about Saul. He was a tough cookie. So we know, I don't think we've gotten Doll's age at this point in time in the manga or in the or any like additional information. I don't think we've gotten her age, but given the fact that Saul would have been her commanding officer 22 years ago, and that she probably would have been at least 18, Doll might be in her early 40s, plus she's a vice admiral, so she's probably, have a lot of that, experience and everything like that. Well, she personally may not have been involved in the Buster Call on Ohara 22 years ago. She seems to at least have some form of a connection to Saul and him being her commanding officer. And maybe she was one of the Marines on the ship that had captured, Olvia, that had managed to capture Olvia and were trying to take her into the world government, and then Saul let her free. So there is kind of this, like, depending on the type of relationship that Doll and Saul, had, like if it was a good relationship, like a mentor-mentee relationship, then maybe she would be a little bit more interested to find out that he survived. And if it was more of like she has a bit more of an animosity toward him, given the fact that he did betray the Marines and leave and then go and try to, he's the reason that Robin is alive, that could be taken different ways depending on how Dahl's, opinion of Saul might be. If it's a positive opinion of him, and if she finds out that Robin and Saul also have this connection, Dahl might be a little bit more willing to maybe allow the Straw Hats to escape if it comes down to that. We know that she is at least familiar with Tashigi and all of the kids from Punk Hazard, because that's where she's introduced, and that's the kids are staying at her marine base. So it's a possibility that maybe that maybe Tashigi has told Dahl about what happened on Punk Hazard, or some of what happened on Punk Hazard, and Dahl's like, these Straw Hats don't seem like normal pirates. So maybe we'll see something about that. But we cut back into the island where we see the Giants again with Frankie's group, and they're just like, where are the others? And they're like, they're in the lab above the clouds. And the Giants are like, on a sky island? And they're like, not exactly. They're just above us, because like we know that the labosphere is up above. So they're trying to get that information. Cut back to where Sanji and Luffy are, and we see coming out of the rubble, we see giant spider legs. And Luffy is yelling at Vegapunk, and he's just like, you can't move? How are we meant to save you then? And Vegapunk is just like, ouch, if you try to move me, I'll die from internal hemorrhaging. And out of the rubble is coming Saturn. And he's not up on, looking more stoic and having his cane and everything like that. He's down. It seems like he's changed all the way, or at least much more, into his full spider form. And Sanji even mentions in a moment that he seems more animalistic or more demonic or something like that, that he seems much less human at this point in time. And I don't think we even hear Saturn talk anymore for the rest of this chapter. I don't think so. I mean, we know that even if you're in your full animal form for being a zone user, you can still talk. That doesn't affect your ability to talk, because like Chopper can be in his full walk point for his reindeer form and he can still talk fine. Same thing with like, Pell when he was in his full, hawk form or falcon form, whichever one it was, he can still talk. Same thing with, other, the various Toby Ropo and stuff like that we saw. Even if they're in their full, animal form, they can still talk. I don't think Saturn talks in the rest of this chapter. I could be wrong, but we'll find out as we go through. But I don't know if he talks anymore, and it may just be he's just so pissed off right now that he's like, I'm done talking, I'm just gonna stab them. And he's gone full more spider psycho. And Luffy's like, but we promised to get you off this island, didn't we? And Vegapunk's like, I did ask you for that, but I've made my bed and there's something here I must protect. And like Luffy's trying to talk to Vegapunk, who's laying on the ground, as Sanji's like watching the giant spider coming toward them. And Vegapunk is like, I was hoping Bonnie's command override would have remained a secret till she was a little older. She'll be a target for the rest of her life. Please look after her. And I'm quite certain that Luffy would, barring them being, interrupted by what's happening here with Saturn showing up, Luffy probably would have been fine to make that same agreement of like protecting Bonnie, because he's kind of developed a friendship with Bonnie over the last several hours, last day or so, since they've been on Egghead and everything. So I don't think Luffy would have any problem with wanting to protect Bonnie. But Sanji's watching as Saturn is coming closer, and he's like, looks like he's given up any pretense of looking human. There's a strange look in his eye. Seems he's completely coated in venom too. And we see the different the spider leg coming down, and it's like just eating through this tree. So it's like Saturn's, one of his innate abilities of his devil fruit might just be being able to either emit so much poison from his body that it's basically like coating him in it, kind of like what Magellan does, as like an additional power, because like Magellan can like coat himself in his venom, and then, you know, venom or poison, whichever one it is, and then use that to, like, anything that he touches will either get poison on it or become infected with the poison, in regards to, you know, if he touches one of the prisoners, that type of a thing. And we get this nice double page spread where we see Saturn coming in and just like stabbing. Well, it's stabbing, and it's also like a couple of the legs look like they've kind of become like tentacle-ish as they're like stabbing around. Sanji has scooped up Vegapunk and is running. Luffy's like dodging all of the different limbs and stuff like that. So it looks like there's multiple Luffys for how fast he's moving, as he's like bouncing around dodging the limbs. And he's just like, you know, Sanji, get Gramps out of here, and you know, he's like, don't stop even if he's moaning about the pain. And Sanji's like, no problem, and like running off with Vegapunk. And Vegapunk, you know, Sanji and Vegapunk are running, and then unfortunately, Vegapunk is like, well, ouch, stop it. I said, it's fine, leave me, Sanji. And Sanji's like, nope, simmer down. We'll figure it out. And then Sanji gets kicked by Kizaru, and then Vegapunk, Kizaru via light sword gets stabbed by Vegapunk. And he's, you know, Sanji's like, no, Vegapunk. And Luffy's like, Apple Gramps. And, you know, Kizaru's just kind of standing there, like, getting ready to kind of finish him off. And Luffy shouts, Sanji, get going. We gotta get to the back entrance. And Sanji's picked up Vegapunk again and is running again. And he's just like, crap, I'm sorry, Vegapunk. And Kizaru's getting ready to, you know, lash out again and go after Vegapunk. And then we get another great double page spread where we have Luffy going giant Gear 5th Luffy, grabbing Saturn by the head and grabbing Kizaru. And he squeezes Kizaru enough, he makes Kizaru bleed. And given the fact that Luffy has become quite adept at like Ryuo and such like that at this point in time, I'm pretty sure, even though like he didn't have like, he doesn't, you can see Luffy's hands clearly, and they don't have like the black sheen of like having hockey on them, having armament hockey on them. So he may just, his own force of will is just radiating into Kizaru, even with him not using the armament hockey, but maybe using Ryuo to like cause internal damage to Kizaru, because that might be one of the more reasonable ways to cause damage to Kizaru given his Logia status. And then Luffy's like pinned to Saturn's face and everything. He's like, oh, no, you two. And Luffy's just smiling, and Saturn is just glaring. Kizaru's bleeding from the mouth, and he's like, you know, there's no way I'm letting you escape, right? And it's like, it's one of those little moments where it's like, generally in One Piece, if Zoro's smiling during a fight, you're in trouble. And if Luffy is not smiling during a fight, you're in trouble. So it's like that flip-flop. And then in regards to this, it's like Luffy is kind of, he is very angry about what's going on right now, because it's just like, you guys keep trying to hurt his friends. You've hurt Vegapunk a bunch. You've tried to hurt Bonnie. You've caused damage to Kuma and hurt Kuma in this regard. The Marines are here, and you're doing a buster call on the island where I am with my friends. Or we're just trying to help Vegapunk and blah, 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 blah. And all you guys are doing is causing us pain and trying to hurt us. And Luffy's like, oh, no, I'm not letting you get away right now. Luffy's not up for that. And so we see, as Sanji is running away, we see giant Luffy in the background with like Kizaru on one hand and, you know, pinning Saturn with the other, which I highly doubt Saturn's happy about. Side note, we know that Luffy has, to a degree, given everything that happened with Magellan and with being helped by Ivankov and Impelled Down, that Luffy has a decent amount of immunity to poisons. And depending on like the toxicity of the poison and stuff like that, because we know that he was still affected by like the stone poison fish or whatever that they ate on their way to Totland when Reiju showed up and had to suck the poison out of him. We know that there's that, but that was a very specific, very highly dangerous type of poison. And as dangerous as Saturn might be, he may not necessarily have his like head and face coated in the poison. If so, then that means it'll probably get on Luffy, but Luffy, okay, two thoughts here. One, Luffy may get, some of the poison on him from where he's touching Saturn, particularly if he ends up having to, like, throw Saturn around or something like that and ends up touching one of Saturn's legs, or if Saturn decides to, like, try to stab Luffy with one of his spider legs to get Luffy poisoned. Luffy might just have enough of an immunity to it that it may not be a problem, or at least for the time being it may not be a problem. But the other thought that I have that kind of goes down like the cartoon route of like with Luffy's Gear 5th power for like him being able to like to a degree manipulate reality and the physical substances around him, is if he gets poison on him or in him from Saturn, he may pull a Smoothie because and just like wring out his own arm to like squeeze out the poison, like we saw with Smoothie do on Totland when she got poisoned by Reiju. Smoothie like rang out her own leg or whatever it was with her juice powers to like extract all the poison that had been put in her from Reiju. And Luffy could possibly do something similar here, given that he that might be something that pops into his head as something that he could try. I don't think Luffy saw Smoothie do that to Reiju's poison, but it might just be something that he might just think of. So that's a possibility. So cutting back to where we have Sanji and Vegapunk. So they're running away. We see Luffy, giant Luffy in the background. By the way, in the perspective that we have of Luffy when he's grabbing Saturn and Kizaru, his straw hat is tiny on the back of his neck. So it's like the straw hat didn't get big this time around, but it has gotten big in the past. Either that's a misdraw from Oda, or it's just that's what happens. The straw hat didn't get bigger at this point in time. But they're running, and Sanji is like, Vegapunk, damn it, don't die on me. What are you smiling about? Stay with me. And we start hearing this beeping into a different area of the island that's probably up in the Labosphere in like the punk record section itself. And we cut to there and we see this screen turn on. And it's just like, mic check, testing, 1, 2, 3. And it's like, we see Vegapunk's face appear on the screen, and he's just like, attention world, hello there. This is Dr. Vegapunk, the world's greatest and most humble scientific genius. I'm sure this message will come as a shock for you all, but please bear with me. What I am about to tell you is the truth about our world. And we have no break next week. No break. We'll find out. Well, Oda could completely cut away from this and go somewhere else next week, for all we know. Or we could get part of what the message is for the world, or we could get reactions to the message, but not the exact message of it yet. From like what we saw with like what happened with like Sabo and Cobra, where it's just like we saw people's reactions to what happened to the announcements about Sabo supposedly assassinating Cobra at Reverie, but we as an audience didn't get the chance to specifically learn about what that was until later. And in this case, it's either we're going to cut back next week, and part of the chapter may be this thing where we see like Denten Mushi all over the world, either the visual ones and the because it looks like there might not be Denten Mushi in the room itself. There's like security camera screens in the room, I think. And this might be in like the headquarters setup area where we saw where like York was being held prisoner on the floor, and where like Kaku might still be. This might be in that part of the lab. I'm not sure. We don't get necessarily a good enough look, but it looks like it's definitely in one of the areas that was cut apart or had a bunch of damage caused to it by either the Seraphim or by Lucci in his fight and trying to attack Vegapunk. So there's that. So this might be, we might cut back and like it might be like Kaku in the room seeing this video go up, and York still trapped on the ground because she was like pinned and like probably like Sea Prism Stone handcuffed to the ground to keep her from being able to go anywhere. And maybe Stussy is like, maybe Stussy's in the room and Stussy's like, I'm staying here to make sure that you don't get away. So even if it does mean the end of my life, I am going to make sure that you don't escape. So you die in this Buster Call as well, and referring to York, given the fact that, you betrayed the man who is like the closest thing to a father that I have. And I'm not going to allow you to do that again. So either you will be killed by this Buster Call, or I will do it myself. Might be like we've been wondering where Stussy is for the past several months. Like, where is Stussy? We haven't seen her really since she got stabbed by Lucci. And it could be that they patched Stussy up to a degree and she's like, leave me here. All of the rest of you escape. Leave me here. I am going to make sure that she does not end up in the hands of the Marines. So that way she can't help the world government again. And it's either I am going to stay here and make sure she dies in the Buster Call, so the government cannot get to her, or I am going to end her. If the government happens to win this fight, I am going to at least end her. So York can't be used against us, or can't be used against Vegapunk or against the other Vegapunks like York and Edison and Lilith that might survive this. And Stussy may have already made that decision. And she may have York pinned and like watching York and like Kaku's off to the side of the bubble like, can someone please let me out of here? Like just like begging to be let out. It's just like, I'm tired of this. The government's trying to kill me again. Can I please just go home now? That type of a thing might happen. But like we might cut to where we see where Vegapunk's message is being broadcast around the world to the visual Denjin Mushi and like the phone Denjin Mushi and everything like that, all over the world, like a giant override for them that maybe Vegapunk designed into like this system, or like he has like this major type of a snail somewhere on the island, or like an artificial snail that he made that like can tap into like the neural network, the neural telepathic link network that the Denjin Mushi have, and even like all the little black Denjin Mushi all over the world start like going off and stuff like that. And like maybe we'll cut around the world to like different places like Sabaody and Alabasta and other places around the world that we know have the Denjin Mushi. And it's just like all of them like start talking with Vegapunk and like look like talking as Vegapunk and look like Vegapunk. And they're like, I have a message for the world, this is the truth about our world, blah, 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 blah. And it goes into explaining it. And maybe what happens is like we as the audience may not get to hear what it is exactly, but it's like everybody else around the world, or like a huge amount of people around the world, including like Morgans, who is like on his teapot, flying teapot ship, is like like scribbling as fast as he can. And like all of the others are like, record that, make sure you're recording this, and like just like scribbling as fast as they can. All of the different reporters are just like, and Morgans are just like scribbling as fast as they can to make sure they get whatever it is that the snails are saying and broadcasting to the rest of the world and everything. And it's like, it's kind of like, in this case, it's kind of like those videos that you find in like spy movies or shows where it's just like, well, to my friends and family and to my colleagues, if you found this, that means I'm dead. It's like, that means I'm dead, or I've been arrested, or whatever the case might be. And this is the evidence that will help lead you to the fact that I am innocent, or whatever the case may be. And in this case, it's like, this is kind of like Vegapunk's swan song. If it is that Vegapunk is dying in Sanji's arms, this might be a way of Vegapunk using this last bit of like connection that he has to Punk Records to like set up this like, okay, I prepared this video, I prepared this giant message that's supposed to go out to the world upon either this specific signal or my death, whichever one the case may be. And this signal will go out to the rest of the world, to any place that has Denden Mushi of varying degrees and stuff like that. Maybe even like it might connect to the pond snails that are in Wano, and something might happen there. We may cut to where like we see Momonosuke and Yamato and Hiyori and stuff like that, and the scabbards, and see their reaction, and like cut all around the world. And we might get the reactions of the people listening in on what Vegapunk's speech is and what his message is for like the truth about their world. But he, we as an audience, we might get to see like their reactions and like, oh my god, that can't be true, or oh my god, I knew it, or Viva Revolution, or whatever the case may be, depending on the certain circumstances. Particularly if it's like, this may also interfere with all of the different Denden Mushi that like all of the different Marines have that are like currently forming that, currently having this Buster Call, leading the Buster Call. All of their Denden Mushi might start going off with this information from Vegapunk, and that might make some of them, like, once this information goes through and they hear it, that may make them go, help? What are we supposed to do? I don't know what to do in these situations. I wasn't trained for this in protocol class. Type of a thing. Like, are we supposed to keep obeying the evil spider demon god, or are we supposed to not? And that could be like a thing where it's like it could be something where it's just like all of these different Marines and all these other people around the world are getting this information from Vegapunk all at the same time, and either this will cause a bunch of the citizens to start being like up in arms, and maybe that'll cause even more rebellions around the world depending on the circumstances, or may cause more fire in the bellies of the revolutionaries that are already having rebellions, and like the 8-nation rebellion thing it is that's going on right now, where they have the other Seraphim off trying to deal with those, and other ones off dealing with that. We may cut to the Cross Guild and see them watching this unfold, or listen to this as it unfolds, and see Crocodile there going, well, that was interesting, type of a thing. And that type of a thing, because okay, this is a callback to, so I found another tangent. So the picture at the beginning of the chapter, that is the cover page, has Uta in it. And while it has been confirmed that within the context of the manga, at least as a child, Uta is canon, what happens in Film Red in regards to Uta and her concert and everything else like that, that's not necessarily canon, because it doesn't quite fit into like where the story would fall at that point in time. But like the fact that she is Shanks' daughter is canon. But this might be, Vegapunk is sending out this message to the world. And in Film Red, Uta uses the SSG snails that she finds washed up on the beach on Elysia, and uses them to broadcast her songs all over the world. And then that, is, climaxes in her having, using them to have this giant concert that is broadcasted all over the world, as we see throughout the course of Film Red, with just people all over the world watching and listening to this, and then getting sucked in by her power because of her song fruit. And then cue rest of plot of movie, with her dealing with emotional abandonment issues and trauma and daddy issues and everything. But like going through all of that, but like Vegapunk, I mean, like, he's the one that developed that technology, if that is like the same like SSG snail technology that like Vegapunk has. Vegapunk has those same snails, given that connection there. And if he is able to use those to make this huge connection around the world with like all of these different visual and audio Denden Mushis, and then make this giant thing, be this message aired around the world at the same time, that's a lot harder for like the world government to be able to stop, if it's something that Vegapunk just has like this giant override and it just gets broadcasted everywhere. And because that's basically what Uta does, except that in this case it's like, oh, the world government's like, okay, well, we're going to allow her to do this for the time being, and then, they send Kizaru and blah, 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 when, it's realized, oh, she has the Song fruit. So she's not going to have, this is not going to help us, because she's going to put all the people into this dream world, and then so much of the world, if they stay that way and she dies, are going to be, like, trapped in this dream world. And, that's not going to be good for our economy. So it's like that type of thing where it's just like, well, we can, Vegapunk can make this huge broadcast similar to what Uta did with her concert, and then, Morgans would be like, okay, well, that giant message must have gone out to everybody all over the world at the same time. For anyone that has a Denden Mushi, like what happened to us here on my Teapot World Economic Journal headquarters. And so now I'm going to then, print this up, and I am going to put it everywhere in the world. That would be like, he's like, screw the money, I have news. Screw the rules and screw the money, I have news that needs to go out. And this needs to make sure that it is printed and sent throughout the world. And the Straw Hats may not even know that this is actually going to happen, or that this might happen at this exact point in time. As in, like, they may not hear the Denden Mushi go off. Or they might, and they might get some of that information. It depends on, communication setups. But, like, having that entire message be broadcast about the world, and depending on how much information Vegapunk would have that he's been able to piece together about the Void Century and the Great Kingdom and the founding of the world government and any other additional information that he may have had that he's like compounded into this, it is kind of like, it is a little bit like YouTube, where he's just like, okay, I am going to literally stream this all over the world at the same time, and it is going to be like his version of like the Super Bowl. It's like, this is the most watched thing that has ever happened via the Denden Mushi network type of a thing. And it would be that. So that would be very interesting there. I think that's about it for what I had for this chapter. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the chapter. There is no break next week, so we should have another chapter next week for 1109, and then it'll be 1110 after that, and then 1111, blah, 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 on and on from there. That is how numbers work. But we also just may cut away, and we may not get to see Vegapunk's thing. We may cut away from the island and go check on Law and Blackbeard and, something else that might be going on somewhere else in the world, because Oda likes to do that to us, where he's just like, oh yeah, here's this giant big panel for battle and big message from Vegapunk, and moving somewhere else. For the time being, it's like, we're going to go away from the Oda, stop it. Yeah, so that might be what happens. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!